Welcome to the Week 3 NFL Salary Exploitation. I'm Jason Gilbo, J Gilbo 11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J Clay. Salaries have been released for Week 3, but obviously we're just kind of barely diving in, taking a look at some pricing descriptions here. And overall, I mean, I feel like with all the injury situations, things have certainly kind of changed.
Whew, yeah, no kidding. I mean, not only in terms of running backs, but the whole landscape. Browns are on their third quarterback in 3 weeks. I mean, Dak Prescott's still in. We got a bunch of injuries to deal with, and moving forward, I actually think the Adrian Peterson one last night was pretty big. We'll see. As the week goes on, we'll see how serious these injuries are. Obviously, Denny Woodhead out for the season. That's kind of a bummer, but a lot of stuff going on for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's like guys like Jonathan Stewart, Doug Martin. Those are the guys you're kind of waiting to see what happens. Arian Foster as well. Yeah. Jumping into quarterbacks here, Marcus Mariota, 5,900 on DraftKings, 7,700 on FanDuel, 11K on FantasyDraft. Still kind of the same situation as last week, more of a DK move.
Oh, yeah, no, you're not touching him on FanDuel. He's only, 300 less expensive than Rivers, and Rivers is the second guy I mentioned here. I'm pretty much going all in against this Colts team. I just love the idea of Andrew Luck, just pulverizing this Chargers defense, and then Rivers in comeback mode. It's not going to be Woodhead anymore, but you know what? We got to give Rivers some credit here, because it's been 3 or 4 years now where he's just been chugging away with backups. I mean, we know Keenan Allen's good now, but Keenan Allen's rookie year, it was like, what is he going to do? And then, this rookie third rounder out of nowhere comes in and starts dominating. But I mean, Rivers, he's a really good quarterback. So, I expect that to continue. But anyway, I got into my second guy first. Mariota, 5,900, 100 cheaper than last week. Obviously hit value late there with that touchdown to Delaney Walker, and then the touchdown to Andre Johnson, who is still alive, contrary to popular belief. But this Raiders defense, now, they're a team and a defense where they have a lot of young pieces, and especially in the secondary, so they're still trying to figure that out. They had Charles Woodson back there last year to still cover up a lot of their mistakes. It's going to take it's clearly going to take a little while for them to get it, but their first 2 weeks aren't necessarily indicative of their talent or what we're going to see moving forward. I think the optimizers generally around the industry have pointed them to being a high ceiling defense, which I still believe them to be. It's just been 2 tough matchups the first 2 weeks, and I actually think I think Mariota's a good bet to do well and hit value against them. But I also think there's an interesting other side of the coin here where I don't think anyone's going to be looking at the Raiders. I just think that's a very interesting game in general. I love Delaney again, so I think Mariota and him are a really nice stacking option once again.
Yeah, I do too, and I'm glad you kind of mentioned the flip of the coin, because I could also see Oakland coming out and, you know what, turning on, we do see that high ceiling, because you look at that last game, I kind of expected a little bit more out of the Titans offense. I'm not a big fan of the Lions defense. I figured they'd get a little bit more. Obviously, I was kind of expecting them to chase the game quite a bit, but that didn't really happen with Stafford, and then them going into the red zone and just having basically 10 penalties call them back. For 100 cheaper than last week, I mean, there's definitely a case to be made with Mariota. 800 more to Rivers on DraftKings, I think it kind of makes him just more of a GPP play, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Certainly a GPP play, but as you mentioned, Rivers, we obviously saw the 4 touchdown upside last week. I think he certainly has that again in what should be, one of the highest paced games of the week. We've seen the Chargers sort of go to I formation a little bit here and there. It'll be really, really, really interesting to see how they game plan this week, because obviously no Woodhead. You wonder how much they're going to go to shotgun, even though that's primarily where Rivers is most comfortable. Kenneth Farrow, kind of a guy hanging around there, might do some receiving work, but Melvin Gordon looks good. I bet we see more I form, and I bet we see more of a reliance on Antonio Gates. They've been kind of hiding his snaps early on, but there's no real room to do that at this stage.
No, definitely not. I mean, you look also two really cheap stacking options. I mean, Travis Benjamin, Tyrell Williams. I like Williams. I think he's actually going to be more consistent than Benjamin is throughout the year. Obviously, Benjamin's just kind of that high playmaker ability guy. But obviously, I mean, seeing what the Colts have done and obviously losing more guys last week against Denver, you're just going to be picking on them for a long time this year.
So there's two guys in week 2 where I feel like every week there's one guy, and you just say he's going to get hurt if he keeps playing like this. Number 1 was Sam Bradford, who was just getting pummeled. I mean, he was getting destroyed. Like at least 5 hits on throws last night that he just got smashed. I don't know how he's going to make it through the season. And also Travis Benjamin, I mean, that dude's 170 pounds. You can't tell me he's 180. And, I mean, even on his touchdown, go back and watch that. He had 2, but the second one, he got annihilated. And, I mean, I know they've already lost Woodhead and Allen. I don't see how he stays healthy if he doesn't protect himself a little more going forward. I don't know how you could protect yourself on that play, but, I mean, I am literally worried for that man's health. Hopefully he can do the Tavon and sort of dance around from now on and just kind of avoid that huge contact. But my God, I'm worried about his life.
Look at you looking out for the league's safety. I mean, someone has to, right?
It's dangerous for a man that's literally weighs less than me.
Yeah, that would be like me basically
Yes.
going out and playing football, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't blast. I'd be dead within
Yes.
week 2.
Yes, you would. Anyway, getting into the wide receivers here. Stephon Diggs, 5,100 on DK. Hate the matchup, but can't deny the target share he's going to get. Sam Bradford was just locked in on him. They were running plays specifically for him. Oh, I skipped running back, didn't I?
Just blew right through it.
Yeah, okay. All right. I'll let you be the host again.
That'd be nice. I mean, you know, you literally just went. You were basically Phillip Rivers like last year. You just didn't go to the run game at all. I mean, that's what happened. So, but I mean, how could you? I mean, you're such a big Melvin Gordon guy, and you blew right through him.
Well, you know what? Woodhead news came out, ACL, done for the year. Melvin Gordon finally starting to look like the guy we all expected, you know, when he was the 15th pick overall, when they traded up to get him. I just see 20 touches a game until, you know, just for the foreseeable future. So against this Colts defense that really hasn't shown much resistance at all, even against, you know, some relatively, you know, the Chargers or the Broncos certainly aren't a juggernaut of an offense this year. So I like him quite a bit this week. 5,800 on DK, 7,100 on FanDuel is certainly okay with me. I like him on all 3 sites. He's more of a cash option on DK. A little tough for me on FanDuel with some of the guys in his range, you know.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at the FanDuel range, and I'm like, I could certainly get on board with that price. I think DraftKings, I just feel the most comfortable using him there. But as you mentioned, I mean, this Colts defense is just brutal in the pass and the run. I mean, you look at Anderson had success as we expected. You look at Theo Riddick and Abdullah, who both had success running the ball and in the pass game. Yeah, I like Gordon quite a bit, especially this week. I think he's kind of a safe option.
Certainly. The next guy here, Charles Sims versus the Rams. So, again, I am a Homer Rams fan, but the point is they play some teams much better than the other. And, you know, they played well against this Buccaneers team last year. But I just think in terms of their front seven, they get a lot of pressure. But that pressure is a double-sided coin because we got Charles Sims running out of the backfield and, you know, getting those slip screens. So I like the Rams, but they certainly missed their fair share of assignments in the secondary. 4,900 on DK this week. Doug Martin injury, obviously, we'll wait on that status. But if he's out, I mean, I think Sims is in play on both sites. I just think, you know, he's more of a PPR guy most weeks. But if Martin is out, he's in play on all slates and all sites because that upside in terms of the receiving game and making big plays. We saw that in week 1 against the Falcons. He can just, slice and dice everyone in the secondary. So I'm certainly a fan of him and his game. If he can get 15 to 20 touches, I think we'll be very happy with the results.
Yeah, and obviously he's coming off a solid 2015 where, he was in that backup role behind Martin, chipped in the passing game, but 4.9 yards per carry. Obviously, you don't expect anything like that in terms of a whole in 2016, but he has flashed the ability to kind of be an actual decent runner. And as you mentioned, I think this Rams defense is going to be really hit or miss. I actually kind of like the Bucs offense this week.
Agreed, for sure.
Wide receivers, now we can get into Stephon Diggs, who coming off a monster game against the Packers last night, playing a Panthers secondary that just looks pretty abysmal. I mean, that was not good.
I don't know if it's not good. I still have a lot of respect for the Panthers defense in general. I just that was kind of like they got out to a huge, kind of like with the Patriots and the Dolphins. That game was just an absolute, the Patriots set off a bomb in the first half, and then their defense was just playing prevent the whole time. So kind of same thing that happened with the Panthers there. I think the Panthers defense is going to keep some people away from Diggs, but it's going to be tough after, 180 yards and a touchdown on national TV, 5,100 on DK. Certainly, I think he's cash game viable on DK. FanDuel, much easier to fade. I actually think he kind of like, Willie Snead this past week. He got that touchdown, but it still didn't kill you if you faded him at his price. I think you can potentially fade Diggs on FD and not get totally killed. But DraftKings, he's going to get 10 targets again. I mean, Bradford loves him. We saw him literally calling plays, talking to him literally in the huddle, being like, all right, this one's going to you, buddy. And, I just think that's going to continue. So 10 targets again, I think, 5,100. I don't know how I can talk myself into fading that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I'll walk back my comments. I mean, front seven I like in Carolina. I still think the secondary is going to have issues. I think the loss of Norman is going to be it. That might lead to the gaping hole that kind of would have been if he ever went down last year. So I think that's where I'm kind of looking. But I'm in agreement. I think FanDuel 6,400 certainly still a value. But I think it is easier to kind of go other directions at lower ownership because there are so many guys in that price range. I mean, there is just kind of a ton of guys there.
It really is. And we'll talk about Jordan Matthews in a second, but I'll pay 500 more for Matthews against the Steelers, in a better matchup, in my opinion. But back to Diggs, yeah. It's just going to take a lot of confidence to talk yourself off that 5,100 price tag, I guess.
Yeah, I can't see myself fading it. It's going to be pretty tough. I mean, I was a bit surprised to see that, actually. I was kind of expecting him 6K at least.
Yeah, agreed.
So, but yeah, you're talking about Jordan Matthews, obviously still to play tonight. Still the same price as he was in week 2. And obviously we saw a big target game from him in week 1. I expect that to kind of be the theme here throughout most of the 16 with Carson Wentz under center.
Yeah, and this is where FanDuel, I pretty much plugged in, barring, hedging to hedge in tournaments, I was pretty much 100% Jordan Matthews on FanDuel this week. And at the time of this statement, we don't know how he did. So pray for me or root against me. Either way, whatever. But 6,900 on FanDuel is just such a deal for a guy. I loved Zach Ertz heading into this year, but you just look with him out. Nelson Aguilar could be, a shining emerging player, but Matthews getting 10 targets until Ertz gets back. It's just that's the way it's going to go. He's getting at least 10 targets a game. And against the Steelers secondary, where they're much improved in terms of run defense, and Ryan Shazier, out there just mauling people. But in terms of their secondary, I still think they're exploitable, and I look at Matthews at 6,900 as a major cash option.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I like the matchup with the Steelers. I think the prices are certainly right. I mean, I look at that Steelers defense. I think they're much stronger against the run than they are against the pass. And I do think that game is going to be a shootout, or in terms of at least Philadelphia trying to play catch up.
Right. And I mean, you look at the difference. He's 2K more on DraftKings than Stephon Diggs. And I mean, that kind of makes more sense to me than, only 500 more. It's tough. I like both of them, but I just got to go Matthews on FanDuel, or just play both of them, I guess, is the answer.
Why not get best of both worlds there?
Right.
Devontae Parker, you talk about as your third guy, and this is simply just because this Browns secondary. You and I might be able to go out and play pitch and catch and do all right against them.
Well, you might be able to throw one up and get me, in a hospital. Like we could if they get the HD cameras out there and you just have me run a crosser and you just lead me a little too much right into the safety. Yeah. Like I could be in the hospital for a year or something.
Oh, we'll cover you on pods.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
You can be in one of those big body things and do the pods that way. Like you're only talking out of your mouth. That's all we see.
Yeah. So Devontae Parker actually fell out of favor big time this offseason. People went back and watched his 2015, which he was injured for, and they decided he couldn't beat press coverage, which, I mean, that was certainly evident in year one. But you want to talk about an athletic specimen who was highly productive in college, first-round pick, brings that deep element to the Dolphins' offense that they need terribly bad. I think they were just kind of trying to work him in week one. And then, in comeback mode, he ended up being a much more prominent piece. But, yeah, as you mentioned, that's certainly one factor. The Browns' secondary is horrible. I think maybe this is a little contrarian, but I think Parker's a borderline cash play this week. 4,900 on DK. Stephon Diggs kind of being in that same price range is going to have a ton of people off him. But I think you can play both and really, load up on the other positions. I think Parker's a tremendous option. All the exposure is going to go to Landry, which, that's certainly viable. But I think Parker is the great tournament hedge in this equation.
I think so too, especially on FanDuel, because I mean, you look the PPR scoring a little bit different. I think that bodes well for choosing Parker over Landry in terms of touchdown upside and more down the field upside. I don't mind his price at 200 less than Diggs, 4,900. You can roster 4 wide receivers if you wanted to with the flex. So I think across all 3 sites, he's a pretty viable option. And I'm with you. I think he is borderline cash.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, with all those guys so tightly, packed together on FanDuel, it's really tough to get them in, but I'm certainly going to get exposure to in tournaments. I don't know if I can do it on cash with, Diggs and Matthews right there, but yeah. Oh, well.
Tight ends, you look at Dennis Pitta this week, who obviously coming off a monster week against the Browns, double-digit targets. The issue with him has always been injuries. It's pretty much always been the issue with any Baltimore tight end has been injuries. So if he's healthy, I don't like a lot of the other options that Flacco really has. I think we saw last week, he trusts Pitta a ton when he's out there.
Yeah, and I mean, prayers out to Denny Carter, who, 3-4 years ago was in on Pitta. Based on this and just based on seeing how much Flacco likes him, I can't help but think how good he would have been a few years ago. Obviously, that's for a different talk, but he's certainly a viable option going forward. And you just look at that FanDuel price. Jesse James was the guy last week. I think Pitt is the guy this week. I don't see how, if you want to get those high-end options in, I don't see how you fade Pitta. Again, if you're paying down at certain spots, maybe you want to move up and look at an Antonio Gates. But I threw Antonio Gates in here because I like his matchup. But I'm looking at Pitta pretty much, pretty hard unless I'm looking to pay up for Delaney Walker or some of the high-end options,
Yeah, I am too, and I'm looking at this Baltimore offense, and I'm just thinking, one, they don't look like they can successfully run the ball. And I think Flacco's going to be forced to throw a ton. And obviously, we've seen Mike Wallace have some success. We saw a glimpse of Steve Smith and kind of his old ability on a few plays last game. But I think Pitta and Wallace might be the kind of go-to guys here for Flacco, and I think he's kind of realizing that.
Yep, that's certainly what it looks like to me. And I'm kind of disappointed Max Williams isn't going to emerge this year, but it doesn't look like he's going to be eaten into those snaps at all.
No, I don't think so. And you talk about Gates here more for a matchup rather than kind of a price.
Right. And again, so this week would have been a caution week with Gates after kind of what we saw with his usage. I was listening to a Chargers preview, and they were talking about how he really only gets used past the 50-yard line now on Chargers drives. And that was certainly evident. I mean, he got that goal line touchdown, but he wasn't really all that involved. Now, with Woodhead out for the year, that's probably going to change the equation. So I think betting on him this week is a good idea because I think people are going to be off him based on last week's usage. But overall, he's certainly in the twilight. He's trying to get that touchdown record, but it's 50-50 now on if they just keep his, usage down.
Yeah, I think so. And I think I'm probably going to be looking more towards DraftKings with him at 4,600 if I am going that route. Because, I mean, I'm looking at 6K. I don't think I want to pay 6K for him on FanDuel. I think I'd rather go with the other two sites there. 8,600, not that bad on FantasyDraft either.
Agreed.
So overall, but I think that usage is pretty much an interesting statistic if they are using him across the 50 only. That upside, there isn't much. So in terms of defenses here, you talk about the Ravens taking on the Jaguars, pretty much the same prices as they were last week, a little cheaper on DraftKings, actually. 2,500 is a pretty much a steal. I kind of like the way they're playing right now. I think we saw against the Browns, they gave up some points, but obviously I think that turnover and other kind of defensive statistics, the upside is really going to be there.
It's a little early in the week for me to be testing out, really building lineups with the optimizer yet, but who was 2,500 last week on DK against the Jaguars,
Yeah,
the Chargers. So, I mean, that certainly paid off. I look at the Ravens week 1 against the Bills, and I was really optimistic about them. They got shelled early by Corey Coleman and some of the other weapons there, Isaiah Crowell on the Browns offense, but 2,500, I mean, I think they have a good enough team to sort of at least bait Blake Bortles into making a big mistake here or there. So while I don't think they're going to be able to hold them down in terms of points, I think they could get some sacks and turnovers.
Yeah, I do too, and I mean at a reasonable price. And FanDuel, I mean, I might be curious to kind of see how things shake up at 4,400 to see what else I like around that price range, but not a bad price there either. You also talk about the Dolphins here against the Browns, who obviously, because Josh McCown's already ruled out for week 3, that just puts them in a horrible, horrible spot.
Now, when Cody Kessler got drafted in the 3rd round this offseason, Kevin Cole of RotoViz and RotoWorld and a bunch of other awesome places, because he's a really smart guy, was talking about how he kind of likes Cody Kessler out of USC. And I'm kind of not out on him. But this week, not prepared at all. I'm in on him on like maybe year 2 or 3. Like right now, the oven just got turned on. Like it's not even finished preheating yet. We're not done with the cookies, We're not even finished mixing the batter. Like you can't expect a finished product yet. I love Corey Coleman. I think he's going to be a great player. I love Gary Barnidge. Seems like he might be back to blocking again this year. We'll see about that storyline. But a hard fade on the Browns this week. I mean, I love Hugh Jackson too, but I got to target them with the Dolphins this week. I just have to do it.
Yeah, and you look, the Dolphins already got a preview, when Garoppolo went down. So you know what? How about let's face a game and a half of third-string quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah, this could get rough. I mean, I don't think their running game is strong enough to sustain, a third-string quarterback at this stage in the season.
No, I don't think so either. And I think you look, obviously, I think last week's situation, I mean, Blunt, it took a while for him to get what he had. I mean, it
Yeah.
really took a long time for him. It took 20 plus carries for him to get to that mark, and obviously he broke up a few late in the game. I think the Dolphins will be able to put up a few points early and kind of make them chase, so that option's really not going to be there with the run game.
And Belichick is a magician. I mean, he's making Garoppolo look like, Joe Montana out there, or should I say Tom Brady out there? But I won't say that for our Northeastern listeners. But I don't think the Browns are going to have the same type of game plan or or equipped like the Patriots are to sort of sustain this.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It's a completely different scenario.
Yeah. So 3K on DraftKings, very interesting tournament move.
Yeah, definitely. Let's wrap things up for the Week 3 salary exploitation. Be sure to check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all great tools and content, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.